They call it the cradle of innovation, a real hotbed for the brightest minds in tech to gather. Anyone who's anyone in the technology industry, they go to this place. And no, I'm not talking about Ozark, Missouri, the Bootu Inc. studio headquarters.
That's more of a podcasting hub.
Exactly. That's where the Boob Tube Boys record their shows. But no, I'm talking about Silicon Valley. Brian Vaughn, you seem like someone who would love Silicon Valley. Tell me everything you know about it.
Well, I'm all about money and tech and wearing sunglasses backwards and driving cars that go upside down. So
I knew it.
You know me. Oh, did you guys see how $100 bills are falling out of my pants right now?
I did notice. I didn't want to say anything, though.
Yeah. Oh, Van's picking them up. I should have thought more about this.
Van Lee.
This was really for show. I need those.
Give me a real quick elevator pitch on your startup idea.
Okay, so I know that there's a real problem for people out there with $100 bills falling out of their pants. So what you do is you take a trough and you drag it behind you with ropes. Ropes pull around the person, and then the bills fall into the trough, and then they can have their slaves, it's 2024. We need to be appropriate. Servants pick them up for them.
That's fantastic. I would evaluate that at $120 million.
Yeah, someone
write the check.
Get a hold of a tech company right now for the, what is this, dollar bill trough?
Yeah, no, that's the idea. No, we need to come up with something clever. So it'd be like Trafalgar Square.
It's TROFF.
I think we have a nose for this sort of thing. I've always thought that. Like I was telling you guys when I was reading the intro to the show last week when we did our preview, I was telling you guys the main character's name. Last name is Hendricks. There's a lot of overlap between these characters in the show and us and our skill set. Like, I think that Van would make an excellent Guilfoyle.
That's the big guy who's kind of dry with the
Guilfoyle,
glasses, right?
sorry. It's yes.
Okay.
Long hair, beard, glasses, very good computer guy, very dry. Yeah, Satanist.
Satanist, okay.
We don't get a lot of that in the episodes we cover, but that's a general overview of Guilfoyle.
So who's Brian? Kumail Nanjiani?
I don't know if Brian would want to go for that role.
You never know.
You might be able to pull off what Jared does a little bit.
Yeah.
You could
be a little bit administrative and scared.
Oh, okay. So Gabe.
Yeah.
I don't know any of their names. I'm very bad about that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed him in this show.
We will go
he's
over.
Amazing.
The cast is going to take us quite a while to do, and we're going to have some caveats that we'll have to get into a little bit on some of that.
Well, because like half of them are awful in real life.
Yeah, it turned out that some of the cast members that maybe didn't go the way the show creators hoped.
I actually found, I don't know if you found this, Spencer, but I was looking up why that might have happened, and I guess a hex was put on the cast at the time of the show's creation, so a full 50% had to be cold for bad behavior.
Well, that's all because Elon Musk funded that Hedge Witch project where they would then hex casts of shows.
I can believe that somehow. I will do a little caveat of my own up front. This is actually the first time when I was watching a show for Boob Tube Boys that I didn't really know anything about it going in, but I knew that I wanted to see more of it. So I have watched the entirety of season 1 and 2 myself. We're doing the last episode of season 1 and 2, of course, but a little background research. I wanted to watch the whole seasons. I didn't go past our episode that we're covering next week, season 2, episode 10. So I don't know anything about what happens in season 3 through 6. Brian knows a little bit, but he doesn't know the end either. And you, Van, you've only seen these 2, right?
Only these 2. So what have you seen then, Brian?
I have seen the first 4 seasons.
And there are 6 total, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Which I watched as they were airing. So you guys didn't see any Stephen Tobolowsky at all.
No, not
That's
at all.
sad.
I don't know what comes up, and I don't want to know. So
I'm going to tell you guys this one thing about him. He plays a character named Action Jack Barker.
Perfect.
I mean, that sounds great.
Brilliant character actor. He can do it.
We always say when we finish talking about these shows, like, well, would you do it? Would you watch this? And I will say I'm going to start season 3 of this like immediately. So I will be finishing the show. I won't be going into what happens after our episodes like we try to do on these sometimes because I don't know and I don't want to spoil it. So we won't be doing that. But I do know every little thing that happens up through what we see. So we can do a little bit of that before our episodes. And what we usually do at the start of these Boob Tube Boys episodes where we talk about the cast, we talk about the show, we do a little bit of an overview. We will be getting into, what is this one? Season 1, episode 8, optimal
tip efficiency.
Yes.
I wrote it down.
So Silicon Valley, the show that ran from 2014 to 2019, 6 seasons, 53 episodes in total. It was on HBO. So again, I can't speak to the nature of how it ended. I'm not sure if it got a good ending or if the show was even doing well at that point.
They all died.
It was, as I mentioned in our teaser last week. It's created by Mike Judge with a couple other guys, John Altschuler and Dave Krinsky.
I've heard the first name. I don't know where from, but I think he's done stuff. The second one, never heard of it.
I definitely know about Mike Judge.
Yeah, well, of course I know Mike Judge. I didn't know he did this show. This is completely
He's
foreign
really
to me.
had his hand in a lot of stuff over a 30-year period.
Mm-hmm.
Stay prolific.
Most of it good.
Yeah.
So this show actually did win, it was nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series, so it got a lot of attention when it was on. And as we mentioned, it is a parody of the culture of Silicon Valley, which is good. I'm really glad that it was so self-aware and at no point tried to make it look like the guys in Silicon Valley are in any way tolerable.
One of the Mike Judge hallmarks is being able to do that sort of thing, which is the King of the Hill thing, which is, here's a bunch of unlikable people. We're going to find the heart in this, but we're not going to go easy on it.
The lead character is Richard Hendricks, programmer who founds a startup company called Pied Piper and chronicles his struggles to maintain his company while facing competition from larger entities. That's the business world for you.
Well, I mean, what is it like? You got two bad scenes don't make. Where's my old guitar? I couldn't stop thinking about Hamlin Rule while watching this episode because they kept saying Pied Piper.
And, Martin Mull passed recently.
Yeah.
One of the greats. Truly one of the greats. And also in our podcast lore, too.
R.I.P.
The lead character, Richard Hendricks, is played by an actor who I've not heard of, actually, called Thomas Middleditch. It's a weird name.
Kind of like a nerd hero there for a bit. Not anymore, but for a bit.
He does have the look of a nerd.
He and Ben Schwartz, who played John Ralphio on Parks and Rec, had like an improv duo that got very popular.
I could see that. He does the mumbly thing really well. It is kind of one note for me after watching the 2 seasons. I know he was the kind of a straight man protagonist, but I mostly enjoyed the other people outside of him in the show.
But that's often the case with, your bland protagonists. He's just there for the others to bounce off.
He just does his nervous energy sort of mumbly thing. He's fine.
And I think he's actually maybe a little better than he needs to be for that sort of role. And I say this having seen, I'm watching season 3 right now because I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and finish since I didn't finish before. And he's not like doing a total heel turn. But the more he engages with his hubris, the character changes, which is good because all of those tech bros, no matter how bumbling and sweet they may be at the beginning, if you give them any shred of money or credit, they will devour you and everything you love.
We'll do the caveats afterwards. We'll go ahead and get through the cast and then we'll mention what we know about some of the actual people who played the characters. TJ Miller played Ehrlich Bachman. TJ Miller was in Cloverfield. He's in the Deadpool movies opposite Ryan Reynolds. He does an outstanding job. We'll just leave it at that for now as Ehrlich Bachman.
Unbearable character at times for me. And I think that if I were to watch this show and there was a point where I would stop watching, it's because I've had too much of this guy. Because, for example, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but this show enraged me.
What a shock.
Yeah, well, the whole tech industry and when you start throwing out words like venture capital, shit like that, founders, I hate that so much. I did editing for a guy like that who, they want to get in that industry. They want to make millions of dollars, just like the guys in the show. And basically, these 2 dudes had an idea. I don't know, it may not even be as good as my money-catching trough, but they have an idea. Some old white man goes, I like that idea. I'll invest. Here's $300 million. Suddenly these 2 kids who, never really had much. I mean, I'm sure they came from somewhat wealthy families, but this is crazy money. Suddenly have all this money. They bought podcast equipment, decided we're the experts. We're going to do a venture capital podcast. And I edited it for several months. And
brutal.
Every second of it was unbearable. The guy should not be near a microphone. Now, I understand podcasting is accessible for everyone, but if you stutter like that, your talents lie elsewhere. You don't need to be doing that because he was and that's fine. A stutter's, you didn't choose that.
And in media, it's very effective if you're the guy who does the start of What Would You Do, the Nickelodeon television show.
Not in a podcast. And it was unbearable to edit for that reason. But also those people treat other people like they're not people.
Of course.
They do the things like, I swear to you, I heard someone say on one of the episodes, at that point, as your business starts to grow and you need to shift and you need to make up some shortcomings in money, don't be afraid to fire, tens of thousands of people. And they were talking about some exploited peoples in a different country. They only make 35 cents an hour or something like that, but whatever.
Yeah,
They'll
that view of everything
job.
as a means to an end.
It's just they quit looking at people as people and see them as commodities for the money and that sort of thing. And I hate that. I think you are a fucking monster if you do that. And I do think the people in this show, they present that well. Maybe not as well as they should.
I do. And I think that's why it didn't bother me as someone who's always bothered, like, if something... I think there are times in the show where it makes it a little harder to, like, root for people.
Sure.
But I don't think that is necessarily a bug, because it does bake in all of the complications of this. Is like, you see these kids when they're young trying to do a thing they believe in, whether it's fucked up or not, and then you see them slowly just doing it for money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the show's handling the material really, really dodges a lot of that. And I do think, though, there is a problem that we have, like, sort of when we watch... I was thinking about The Wolf of Wall Street, which gets a lot of this too. A lot of talk about, like, is this glorifying, a horrible ultra-capitalist culture or whatever? And to me, it seems very clear no. But if you're going into it without much, like, understanding of, like, this is a Martin Scorsese movie, these are these actors, and I understand the feel of this movie, you could watch it and be like, this is a celebration of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, people still to this day are like, Gordon Gekko rules.
Yeah.
No, Gordon Gekko was a villain.
Yeah, and it's like, I understand the message of Fight Club. I don't think you do.
I just like to hit people.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't mind as much with Ehrlich because I didn't really care about him. Like, personally, it wasn't like, I hope things go well for Ehrlich. He was in there to do his little bit, and then he got out in a lot of cases. And
I forgot that's where all this started, frankly. And let me say, on the side of Ehrlich, as somebody, when I was watching the show in the original run, love that guy. Like, I was very into that character. I don't know if I was just watching it weekly or whatever, but this time I did notice a couple line reads that didn't quite, there are some that he doesn't quite, but when he hits them dead on, TJ Miller was very good at that sort of blustery asshole character for some reason.
Yeah, I was going to say, he is that guy, though, so that's why he was good at it. And I mean, I've never seen him in any other role that wasn't that.
He does have that effect where you listen to him and he is just a huge asshole. There's no doubt about that.
You know right away.
It's just it's so effective comedically, and his little... Because, I mean, most of them act like assholes in the show, and what he does to sprinkle it on top is a welcome change of pace.
Sure.
But yeah, not all the lines hit comedically in the show. There's certainly some parts that fall flat, and that's partly the writing wasn't always there for some of it.
Well, with the Mike Judge show, like, they're always so joke heavy that you are going to get some misses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. And the show also, after the fact, got a lot of flack for being a boys' club in the writer's room and the actors. So I think there's some questionable stuff with the making of it. Maybe it's not, it didn't need to be made. I don't think that, but I think there were some problems behind the scenes. And if you're watching it with a discerning eye, I think you can kind of see that sort of stuff in the show, just from like the fact that the cast is like 6 dudes. And sure, there are some women on there, but they're clearly second rate. They're not part of the core group or whatever. And I think they probably should have done something.
The essential problem with all television until 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And still, sort of.
And Ehrlich as a first name?
Ehrlich Bachman.
That is dumb. No, thank you.
Man, one thing about that character, I love how every single part of him is written as a douchebag. Like, I mean, just every bit of his backstory, everything he does.
All the facial hair, weird cuts. I almost did that.
In it.
I had to shave, trim it
have.
down today, and I almost did, but I didn't. Should have.
We don't get much of Josh Brenner, who plays Nelson Big Eddie. I don't think we get maybe any of him in these 2 episodes. I'm not sure because I did watch all of them myself, so I don't remember if we get a lot of Big Head.
Sure either.
He is.
I'll have to look him up because I don't recognize.
I don't think we do, and he's honestly like not very much of a character in the show, other than the first season.
He is Richard's best friend. They both program, but not nearly at the same level. So Big Head is listed in the cast as a big cast member, but he gets kind of phased out pretty quickly because he doesn't have the skills that the rest of them do. And he doesn't end up having to play as a Pied Piper. The company that is trying to steal Richard Hendricks's program, his technology, accidentally poaches Big Head thinking that he can help them because he was involved. But
yeah, he turns out to just be an idiot hanger-on.
He just makes a lot of money there for doing nothing.
Now, the plot line with him, though, is very funny and lampoons the whole Silicon Valley thing, in that he keeps getting promoted at Hooli, the rival company, because they keep thinking like he must just like this mysterious guy he's been around all these successful things.
He must be doing something, right? Yeah, he's not in our episodes because I don't recognize that guy at all.
There's not any of that touched on in ours. When we did the finales, they just focus on the big plot that was happening at the end of it, and they kind of left those side stories off. Next, we have Martin Starr. That's Bertram Guilfoyle. He's actually in quite a few things I don't remember him being in, like Adventureland, Knocked Up, and This Is the End. I've seen all of those and don't remember Martin Starr in those.
It's in Party Down.
He does a really good job in his dry role, like we talked about earlier.
This is mostly all I've seen him do, but I mean, again, this is another case where he's so good at this.
He does it very well.
And maybe it's a Satanism. I don't know, but I like the character, and I think of the Silicon Valley guys, this might be the one to like because he seems to just like doing his stuff.
And that is absolutely right, Van. And that comes up later in the series, too, when he refuses to. And that's when I feel the most solidarity. Well, like you said, he's kind of a good character. Because if something doesn't, like if he doesn't think something's being done with any reason other than financial gain, he just won't do it, which does come up later.
That's probably why I glummed onto the guy, because there is that vibe there.
Next, we have Kumail Nanjiani, who plays Dinesh Chogtai. You don't ever hear his last name in the episodes that I saw, so I just put it down from IMDb, and I hope that's how you say it.
I only heard Dinesh maybe once or twice in our episodes, and unfortunately, every time I hear it, I think of Dinesh D'Souza, who is a goblin, so I don't like him.
This is our second time with Kumail because he was in our Star Wars episode.
He's in Kenobi.
And he looks a little different in that, right?
Yeah, he was ripped as fuck then. Like a fucking lunatic.
And he wasn't wearing a Denny shirt. In Silicon Valley, he's always wearing Denny from the Room shirts.
But he wasn't that in Star Wars because that would be weird.
He did a couple, apparently had his own movie, The Big Sick, that I haven't seen.
It was pretty popular.
I saw that movie. It was very good.
That's I remember what you saying,
I'd watch
but
it.
Worth watching.
People were coming out being like, if you're an artistic person, this is the movie. This is the critical darling. And I remember hearing that, but then everyone I would see talking about it, and I asked Brian about it, was just like, no, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I liked it.
No one is like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. But I don't know. It got a weird traction when it released.
I think there was a little bit of that boost of like, well, Kumail's making the transition into drama.
Right.
And that always happens when a comedian does that.
Is he any good at that?
Yeah.
I feel like that he would definitely always be funny anyway, though. It's just one of those
and I think
types.
that's the case with pretty much all of the comedians who make the jump. And I think that's why they're good at it. Usually. Is a lot of dramatic actors, when they try to be funny, it's like, oh.
Yeah, it's that whole cliche that they always say about how comedy is the hardest form of acting or whatever. It holds true when the comedians can do the other thing, but
yeah, like I don't need to see Daniel Day-Lewis joking around.
I don't think he would know how.
No.
I just can't imagine that.
Michael Shannon telling a stand-up set. Oh, man.
Yeah, I'd be scared.
And these are such good actors, too. You'd think, like, why can't they do that? But it's just like not part of their
It's just a different thing.
Kumail Nanjiani, I did actually take a recent trip with Katie. We did a little vacation over the weekend. It was fun. We listened to Beta Male, the Kumail Nanjiani stand-up set that is brilliant. It's a great one. It's a little slow at the end, but overall pretty good. And just a dude that I think Hollywood understands is kind of an asshole, but does get work because he is supremely talented.
And he's an asshole in the way where if he is, I don't know the guy, but like he can still get work because he's not the sort of asshole that some of the other people in the cast might be.
Well, yeah, true. I just don't like muscly guys. Like if you have the weird discipline to be, go look up Kumail Nanjiani. He is like gross jacked, like steroids, works out every moment of the day. And I'm not saying he does steroids, but it looks like that. And that, I don't know. I've never met a guy that does that I would go, oh, this guy's great.
Yeah, I really think it's a function, too, of someone being like, we'll give you $20 million to look like a superhero and be in this movie.
And, of course, when you have that money, you can do that.
You have the time.
It's so hard to imagine watching him in this show and him looking like that. Yeah,
he is. It's nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah, really, anyone in this show being jacked seems strange.
Thomas Middleditch being jacked would be the weirdest thing.
I'm pretty sure that guy can't. He's just got that super scrawny build where it's just not possible.
That'd be like me being jacked. That's not going to happen.
And it's also funny to imagine Ehrlich being, because they play on him being a heavier guy so much. It's him being ripped and in shape is just weird.
Well, I watched these back to back, of course, season 1 and season 2 episodes. And in the first one, I thought he's pretty chunky here. In season 2, he's thinned up a bit and he looks a little more like he does in more recent stuff.
And they style him a little better.
Oh,
I think that helps. Like he doesn't look as dumpy.
But I wouldn't call him chunky.
No, he just seems to want to play into being like, I'm not saying it goes to this length, but he has kind of that comfort in his quirky appearance, like Kevin James sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's not that extreme.
It's a very lean in thing of all this guy does is smoke his bong and eat cereal,
That's
is
great.
the idea. Right, exactly.
The next we have Zach Woods, who plays Jared, but whose actual name is Donald. I don't know. They mentioned that at one point in the show.
Or OJ.
Yeah, other Jared, even though he's the first one. That's Jared Dunn. He is the very strange, quirky secretary type administrative who has all the business background and is cheerful and sad at the same time and does his own brand of that kind of humor. He was in the other guys in something called In the Loop from his IMDb page. I feel like I've seen him a lot.
He
but
was Gabe in the office.
That must have been it.
And he's another
so good at it.
Wonderful comedic character actor. Just has so many little ticks and line reads that you would not expect.
He has those sad blue eyes.
There's something really weird about him. His character actually, when he gets introduced in the show, brings attention to his ghoulish features. He actually says that in the early part of the show. And that's a pretty good description. That guy knows what he's doing when they have him on the screen. Like, he just knows how he's going to come across.
He's one of those like comedians that understands how to use his features. Like, I look unique and I will use that to my advantage.
And he'll do that like afraid face he does all the time.
Couple other people to round out the cast. I didn't write down what these people were in because they're more bit parts. But
I didn't write down their names.
I did write down their names, but nothing else. Amanda Crew plays Monica. She is the original investor in Pied Piper's, kind of like his right-hand man. She does all of the kind of like the administrative stuff for him, and she ends up kind of being their account manager in a way. But she just kind of gets involved through the company through their initial investor. And that company is called Raviga, which we see a little bit of their conference room in the second episode that we'll cover.
And that company is headed by a woman who, seriously, up until looking it up for this show, I thought her last name in the show was Breen, but it's Bream with an M, like Sid Bream.
What a miss.
Yeah.
Matt Ross plays Gavin Belson, the Hooli lead man who is
smarmy as
supposed to be a good play on what the billionaires of the world are really like.
He's really good, too.
He does a great job of that. There's a brief mention I'm going to make of our attorney in the next episode, who you guys might recognize as Lloyd Braun from Seinfeld, and a couple other things. He was in. Did you guys watch The Hand That Rocks the Cradle when you were young and it came out? I did.
I mean, back then, yes.
I did. I watched it when I was like 8 or 9, and I remembered him from that. I never knew that was Lloyd Braun, though.
He was the Hand, by the way.
He's also great in this show.
Just the one scene I saw him in was phenomenal.
He is awesome. He pops up just every now and then.
Yeah, I read he had a reoccurring part.
He does, yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, that's Matt McQuay. He plays Pete Monahan, the arbitration guy who we'll see in the next episode. And then a mention that I wanted to throw in here because we'll talk about his character, even though he's not in either one of these, is Christopher Evan Welch. He plays Peter Gregory, who actually is that investor who first buys or funds Pied Piper in the first season. He's only in the first 5 episodes, so they soft wrote him out at the end of the first season, I think because he was already kind of sick, and then he died in between filming.
Of lung cancer?
I didn't actually investigate that.
I know it was cancer.
It was some kind of, like a disease situation, and his health took a turn from the worse. He didn't live for season 2, so they had to completely write him out of the show in season 2. So he is not in any of it past the first 5 episodes, but he plays a pivotal part in the setup of the show and the foundation.
Which essentially had to change the entire direction of the show.
You would have actually really enjoyed him, man. He put a lot of, I guess, eclectic sort of scene opportunities for it. It changed the nature of the show because he was just so weird and awkward. So it took away from some of the seriousness that they would have on any of the business meetings that would be annoying to watch. He couldn't do that because he was just so weird.
Well,
interesting guy.
This seals it. Fuck you, cancer. I didn't care up until now, but hearing cancer taken this kind of way.
This is a brave stance you're taking.
Yeah, I take that, cancer.
You were notorious for being kind of not sure which way to lean on cancer.
Real Switzerland of cancer.
Yeah, you know what? I want to see you put your fucking money where your mouth is. I want to see a ribbon on the back of your car by, let's say, the next time we record.
Deal.
So before we start our recap of our episode that we're doing, which is season 1, episode 8, I'm going to give you guys a brief primer of season 1. I pulled it from Wiki, but I will be making my own edits here as I go since I have watched all of it twice in recent memory here.
So this is, you got your wall sanded. You're not quite ready to paint.
Oh, I don't know what actual primer
is. The texture's kind of weird.
Yeah, but you're ready to put that primer on there. That gets it ready for the paint. What happens if
you just paint without the primer?
Sometimes the paint will come off.
But it might not.
The texture won't. Well, I mean, yeah, it might not. It might be fine. You don't know. The texture won't be good. I would try to
skip that step.
You wouldn't primer?
No.
I think you're going to have a spotty wall, my friend.
I don't like those kind of steps where it's like, really, you should do this. It's like when you put together a meal and they're like, no, refrigerate it overnight. Just want to go ahead and cook it. I don't want to do that.
There's always one step in every process that might as well say, make it take longer, make it be worse.
You guys see that table in front of you? I primered that table before I put the sealant on.
No wonder it works so well.
Did you, how does the expression go? Did you measure twice and cut once?
I often do. I did when I built the thing with the plexiglass in front of you. Yeah.
Did you speak softly and carry a big stick?
Often do.
Same thing.
Do.
So season 1, Richard Hendricks is our main character, the employee of a tech company named... Okay, initially he starts at the company Hooley with Gavin Belford.
Okay, but so then he gets his idea and leaves.
He kind of has been working on it, but it's not done. His coworkers see it as a joke. He's an awkward guy no one likes. So in his spare time, he's working on an app called Pied Piper that contains a revolutionary data compression algorithm. He's very good at that part. So Peter Gregory is our billionaire who hears about this app. Peter Gregory gives a TED talk in the very first episode about how much he hates college and how no one should go to college, drop out and start your business instead.
Because those fuckers do that. They're like, I didn't go to college. All I did was get $300 million from my dad.
Right.
And I started this thing and I'm successful. So therefore, you don't need college.
So Peter Gregory acquires a stake in Pied Piper. Richard hires the residents of Ehrlich Bachman's business incubator, as he calls it, because his home.
Oh, okay.
His home, it's his, he owns it, but he lets potential up-and-comers in Silicon Valley live there for free. He gets a stake in their businesses.
He believes himself quite the player in the tech game.
When in reality, he's never had a single success.
Okay, this makes so much more.
Yeah.
The second episode, they kept saying incubator and okay.
There is another future line I just have to tell you guys about Ehrlich where he combines his money with someone else's who has $20 million.
And says they're combined.
And he's like, and now we have a combined assets of $20 million. It's like $20 million and $36,000. And it's like, I like the detail being he has $36,000, which is like, okay, he has a little bit of savings, but he's trying to play with like tech billionaires.
So Bertram Guilfoyle and Dinesh Chugtai were other people in the incubator. Richard met them in that capacity and got them. They're just app developers. They're programming whizzes, and he got them on board for Pied Piper, meeting them through Ehrlich.
And they secretly love one another.
They never show it. Along with Jared Dunn, who actually was an employee at Hooley, who is there when Gavin is trying to buy Pied Piper from Richard. Richard ultimately ends up going with the other bidder, Peter Gregory, and Peter and Gavin are rivals. They're billionaire rivals. They hate each other. So they're bidding on Richard together. Richard ends up going with Peter Gregory because he's saying, I'll give you a smaller amount. I'm not going to give you a flat rate, but it's 95% your company. If you sell to Gavin, he's going to just absorb it all and you'll not have anything to do with your product. So he ends up going with Peter Gregory on that. He turns Gavin down. Jared is so impressed by this that he shows up at Richard's house, at Ehrlich's house, like the next day or something, and says, I want to leave Hooley and join you guys. So that's how that happens.
And that's referenced in our second episode, I believe, briefly, where someone kind of points out, like, hey, Jared, I bet you wish you hadn't, gone with us, because he did give up, like, an executive position.
Yeah. He had a comfortable job, good salary, benefits, all that, and he left it just because he wanted to do this thing with Richard. So that's our origin story of Jared. We have a mention of Big Head, who's just Richard's friend who doesn't know how to do anything at all and ends up getting stolen by Hooley because they think he might, and they also want to get back at Richard. So he just ends up getting promoted because they want to slowly build a case that it was actually him who created Pied Piper and not Richard. And then we have Gavin Belson, who's the head of Hooley. He is this whole while trying to reverse engineer Pied Piper on the side. Since he couldn't buy it from him, he decides he's just going to recreate it with his infinitely bigger resource pool, and he's going to make it bigger and better in a program called Nucleus. Both companies end up getting scheduled to present at TechCrunch Disrupt, which is like this big startup thing that somehow Richard gets involved in because he applied before Pied Piper made it big, because it's really not supposed to be for established companies. It's for people trying to make it big, up-and-comers. And when Richard gets in, Gavin Belson decides, well, I'm going to one-up him. I'm going to be the keynote speaker at this thing. So they both show up there. They have a big, that's what we're working toward here in the finale episode that we are going to be discussing, where they're at TechCrunch together. And Pied Piper rushes to produce a feature-rich cloud storage platform based on their compression technology. At this TechCrunch event, Belson presents Nucleus, which is what Hooley has stolen and ripped off and ended up making much better because they've used the technology from Richard, incorporated into their much larger suite of programs that Pied Piper won't have.
So how did they get a hold of his stuff, or did they just come up with their own way to do it?
I think there were coworkers of Richard's at Hooley that knew enough about the starting point of his app to where they could at least like take the data and
get to point B or whatever.
Because they have, millions, billions of dollars at their disposal, and they can kind of start with what he ended up with and try to figure it out with their resources.
But it wasn't they got a hold of a flash drive and got his stuff.
Wasn't it kind of, though, like in a sense that some of those guys that had worked with Richard did have to give them?
They had actual stuff. It may not have been the program.
Right. I think he sent like way too much of that information because
he wasn't careful enough.
Yeah. And they tried to trick him and act like they were trying to help. So they end up with more information than they should have had. And they use it against him.
They wouldn't have been able to actually create it on their own.
No, but they have a whole team that can use his final product and just try to unravel it.
Like anything, like if there's a good idea, a big company will be like, let us just take that away from you and make the money from it.
So the whole point of this first episode with this thing that they've gone to this event is they're trying to win the scholarship by, and everyone here has the same kind of software, right? It's compression, data compression.
That's especially the finals round that we see. Technically, it's between Hooley and Pied Piper, and they both are offering compression.
And for a reason, which is that essentially Hooley's only doing that to try and beat Richard's company. Otherwise, it might be a different thing.
Sure.
I get the sense that all the other companies, based on the little snips we see, are doing something else.
That's fair.
All it is, when this is, like I said, this is mostly meant for up and comers. So the grand prize is just $50,000. It's not going to make or break.
Which is also the absurdity of Gavin Belson doing it.
He just wanted to humiliate Richard so badly that he went in with that and was like, we're going to get to the market before his company with what he's trying to do and make it better. And he succeeds when he does his presentation. And Pied Piper, when we start this last episode, is thinking, well, we can't top him because he's doing what we're doing, except better.
Right.
So we're finished. When the episode starts, they've pretty much decided, there's no point in us even bothering.
It's like when California Dreams wrote this really cool song and then the rock star Zane Walker stole it from him and recorded it in a professional studio. And everybody knows Zane Walker. Who's going to believe them?
He's got 2 of the last letters in the alphabet.
And he wore a vest.
Oh, well.
Right, cool.
I'm sold now. Not a leather jacket, but a vest, which is like...
Gotta let those arms breathe.
That's the Mormon version of leather jacket, a vest.
Let's get into this first episode. There will be some other things that I'll have in my notes that I'll kind of try to explain as they come up that we may not have covered in our primer, which is an unnecessary step in painting. I will mention that, and I'll try to fill in some more gaps that you might not have been able to figure out when you were watching it, Van, because they also do some kind of callback jokes in these that wouldn't really be funny if you hadn't seen the origin of it.
Both of these season finales, I didn't realize how midstream you kind of get thrown in from the episode prior.
Every time I pick an episode, it's technically a two-parter, and these aren't officially two-parters, but they might as well be.
That is kind of your thing, like with the grandmas.
Yeah, I don't know how that two-parter grandmas. That's what I do.
Well, and as someone who, again, I just watched these 2 episodes, I got most of it. You get the idea.
Yeah, you're going to get the overarching thing. The only thing you're going to miss will be like little details.
Sure, and that's fine. Like, no point did I go, harumph. I just came into this episode.
I wanted
it's not
to see
doing it.
More of Big Head.
That's right. Where's Big Head? Mr. Big Head, Ralph Big Head from Rocko's Modern Life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, Big Head is officially 2 words. It's not, I would have thought it was just one, like Big Head.
So his nickname is Big Head.
Because his last name is Spaghetti. That's it. No, he doesn't have a big head at all. He's a small guy.
So this is a real boner situation.
Yes.
Where his name was like Bonerowski.
Except Boner kind of looked like a boner.
Okay.
Yeah. Like he was peeking out and shouldn't have been.
He should be flaccid, but he's not. Unless it's an appropriate situation to have a boner.
Like during Group 2.
It's actually flaccid. Not a lot of people know how to say that correctly.
Oh, excuse me, Webster.
And also, like, that oil is flaxseed oil, not flaxseed.
They actually do have that exact line. Richard reads that early in season 2 where they're having a meeting and Ehrlich says flaccid and Richard interrupts him and goes, it's actually pronounced flaccid. Not a lot of people get that right. So I thought I would throw that in there, even though you wouldn't possibly get the reference.
No, but fans listening to this who like Silicon Valley, who've come here for the first time, welcome.
Yeah.
They liked it. They were like, I know that. I recognize that reference. That's how they talk.
I like that person with that accent liking Silicon Valley. Yeah, it's perfect.
This is a wonderful computer show.
Oh, yeah. Mark Steven, he loves it.
Too many first names.
It's a real name of one of my cousins.
That is like a hillbilly name.
Yeah.
Mark Steven, come for dinner.
Yeah, I have a lot of those deep into my family roots. A lot of those names you wouldn't think those would be combined, or at least if they were, you wouldn't think you'd use them both.
So again, just since we're getting started here, this is season 1, episode 8, optimal tip-to-tip efficiency, and it was, believe it or not, all the way back June 1st, 2014. Which in some ways sounds like very recently, but was actually over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Still in our 30s, right?
No, we were 29.
Okay.
Oh, to be 29, not really.
Right on the precipice of our 30s at that time period.
What a sad time.
The whole romanticism of like 20s, I don't know if I feel that. I don't
my
know
30s, my early 30s were way better.
Yeah. Honestly, 30s way better than 20s. A lot of this is I didn't fuck them up. Not the same way.
Sure. There was still some fucking up going on.
I think there'll always be a little bit of that.
Well, there better be.
Doing it right now.
Sounds boring to just be perfect. So this one starts while presenting the vision and capabilities of Pied Piper to the audience of TechCrunch at the end of the last episode. Ehrlich was attacked by one of the judges, is what happened.
Explain this to me. So what I gathered is that he slept with that judge's wife.
Correct.
And
both of them, like an ex-wife and the current one as well. That's at the conference.
Which he interprets as doing work for the team.
Very clearly it worked out in their favor. So that happens. Then the judge chooses to assault him.
Right as he's giving the presentation in the first round of the whole conference.
And he's got a nice black eye. He's got a shiner.
Mm-hmm. He's worse for the wear. He did get pummeled a bit.
But as a smarmy dude, he figures out to take advantage of the situation.
Of course, that's exactly what he would do. So the administrative guy who's handling the TechCrunch side of this he's worried the company is potentially going to get sued from this, or the conference people, whatever. He doesn't want to be negatively involved in it. So he's basically saying like, look, you guys can just be in the finals. We won't worry about even you didn't get a chance to present. We're just going to put you all the way in the finals as an exchange to not do anything legal, with the fact that one of our judges beat you up in front of everybody. And they say, sure, that's a perfectly fair deal. And Ehrlich, of course, as you mentioned, says, oh, well, how about our hotel accommodations? What about those? The scene cuts downstairs to the conference room where Gavin Belson is unveiling Hooli's Nucleus platform. This is where Gavin presents what they're going to do, being what Pied Piper is trying to do with a whole lot more.
Yeah, plus 100.
Really great joke at the end where he stops his big tech explanation and then introduces Shakira.
I also really like that Shakira's not there.
Yeah, they just play the song.
Yeah, and then she says, hey, but she never show her. This is a real Steve Jobs presentation, and I thought they got the aesthetic right.
They actually do similar sort of things with getting musical guests to appear at various Silicon Valley concerts that are always really dead energy in this. But they actually did open the show with actual Kid Rock in one, and then Flo Rida in another.
Wow.
So they get all the best.
And Peter Gregory, who of course is dead by this point, says when it's his show that Flo Rida is playing at, and he comes out and awkwardly says, "Thank you, Florida."
I do remember that, actually.
Which I liked.
I don't know if this is intentional, but I think that they got the right sort of artists for when they use them.
It seems like
and I think it probably is intentional because Mike Judge once used Chuck Mangione to that sort of effect.
That's very true.
So not only does Nucleus seamlessly integrate with the rest of Hooli's applications, it also gives the user cloud access to all their files at a highly compressed rate, blah, 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 tech speak. Gavin displays the platform's Weissman score, which I'd never heard of. I don't know if that's real. I don't know.
I'm going to look it up.
On the projector for all to behold, 2.89 Weissman score, which is the best.
Fuck.
That's the best score in the history of compression, guys.
And I was like, is that the average Metacritic score for director Lynn Weissman?
This matches what Pied Piper offers, except with a whole lot more other features to boot.
It's not real.
Okay.
It was created for the show by Stanford professor Sachi Weissman and PhD student Vinith Misra.
I like that. You don't have to do anything but play fast and loose with this stuff because it won't age well. It can't.
That's very true.
With tech information, I think that's why this show holds up in the way it does, is it doesn't try to present things necessarily as like, we need to use the cutting edge thing of the moment. By the time you're done filming, it's outdated.
I am surprised that there isn't like a simple way to measure compression, though. I would have thought that they did have that. So I assumed that it was real and I wouldn't know. Most of the stuff that they use, their buzzwords in Silicon Valley, are not in my standard.
No, it's like any show, like if I'm watching a show about a bunch of people who work on a submarine, about 10% of what they say is jargon that I am like, I don't need to know that.
Yeah, it doesn't
If
matter
I watch
at all.
10 movies like this, maybe I would start to understand it.
So the Pied Piper team, they recognizes they're finished. And then we get our intro, which is, we're already in that era now where they don't do them anymore. It's now just like, it's a quick 5-second thing like we played at the beginning of our episode here. And then that's it.
It's you see like Sim City in the background.
Yeah, and Alf's looking at a woman in the shower. But it's animated.
Well, yeah.
I would really love it if a modern show just did that. You know, this music that we played at the beginning of it with slow motion, like seeing the characters talk and their names at the bottom. Let's see him try that. Let's just see how it goes. So still seated in a now dark and empty conference room, the Pied Piper members are mourning their demise together. Ehrlich tries to stay cheerful. Richard is really not having any of it and is positive that they can't offer anything that Nucleus doesn't at this point, and there's no way they can possibly win, and they never even figured out how to properly compress 3D files actually on top of everything else. And Ehrlich says, well, that doesn't matter. 3D movies are stupid.
And he's right.
He is.
And the technology's already gone because no one cared. I had a 3D TV, never used it.
I think I may have two or one that could. And yeah, you had to have the glasses, right?
Now, they weren't the old style where one plastic lens of red and one of blue. It was a different style, but you had to wear them. And what it would do is you'd turn on the TV, turn on the 3D function, get everything warmed up, make sure you had a 3D Blu-ray player or whatever, get it all loaded up.
That's a lot of trouble.
Hit play, sit down, put your glasses on.
It's just not probably what I would want out of the experience.
And then 45 seconds in, you're nauseous because everything is like blasting you in the ears through your eyes. That's how that works. And then you turn it off and you never do it again.
It's so gimmicky anyway. It doesn't add anything of actual value to the movie. That I remember I watched, I think it was Monsters and Aliens in the theater. And the only thing I remember about the 3D...
What is that? That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It's a Disney movie. Or
I've lost
it. It's an animated thing.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
Because you can imagine just by the name of it.
Yeah, no, it's very lighthearted, silly stuff. And there was somebody had ping pong, like, you know, one of those strings attached to the ping pong paddle?
The paddle.
And the ball came out of the screen to us.
Bumped you in the head.
Yeah, so that was the only thing I remember about it. The rest of it was just like, okay, yeah, it's not useful.
Well, the only things I've seen are like the Na'vi coming out at me.
I was going to say Avatar. That's the big one.
What would you guys like in a perfect world? What would you like to have a 3D experience with?
Well, see, I don't know that I want one at all.
If you're forcing me to do it.
What about like Turbulence 3?
Oh, yes, I do want that.
That's what
Any
I'm
of
thinking.
the motion picture man movies, I'd like to see like Denny from the room tumble out at us.
Yeah, or Neil Breen's coffee comes at us.
Yeah, and we have to lay down in it.
He offers us a plate of just spinach leaves.
I want to see that kind of a movie with 3D technology. That would be...
John DeHart lies on top of us and smears his body and ice cubes upon our chests.
To realistically answer the question, I think the only time to ever do 3D is your huge blockbuster action movies. And maybe you can get lost in it once every couple of months. But for example, when I managed the theater, we had 2 3D theaters, and one of my first acts there was to drop the 3D from our theaters because we had to have special showings. We'd have the glasses, which people would break and lose and steal, and it just was not worth the hassle. But 2 older ladies came in and reamed me out for like a week. They would come in and yell at me because I was getting rid of the 3D. So there were people out there who liked it.
One of the last great innovations of their life they were going to experience, you took it from them. So I can see why they were upset.
I like how you glum on that they will be dead soon.
Well, it's like, I think of
they
it
might
like...
be dead now.
I bet they are. I think of it like that episode of Happy Days we did where we watched that old man in the grocery store in that 70s episode. And you just know that guy didn't survive that decade. And we talked about that in that episode.
Enough.
I can't believe how many people from Taxi are still alive.
That is weird.
Huh.
They all look like they were close to being dead.
Hey guys, I need a break. Let's stop.
So yeah, we agree with Ehrlich. 3D movies are stupid, and now they're not. They don't exist. He still thinks they can win this thing if they pull off a real showstopper performance. He would say that because the performing part is like all he brings to the company. He really likes doing that. So he's like, well, as long as we perform well, we can still win. It'll be fine. I can save us. For now, he has got a plan to go engage in some mental warfare with Gavin, and he takes off. Jared, for his part, is also trying to be optimistic, which is the thing he does, despite how sad his character is. He has just been, before this episode, driven to a still constructed island, a private island by Peter Gregory, who is making his own billionaire island. It's not done yet, completely uninhabited, and Jared was in a dry realist car that they sent him home in at that company, and the car just reprogrammed its route and went to the private island, and it took him 4 days to get there, and he was stranded on the island. So this is why Jared is all out of it in this episode, is that he just got back from having been on an island by himself for like a week.
Because he seemed weird to begin with, but it was like weird but tired.
Yeah.
Right.
So it makes sense.
Yeah, he hasn't slept in days, and he got, that horrible experience. So Jared, he seems even a little more unhinged than usual, and he comes across as more unbalanced and inspiring in this.
Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. We've got a great name. We've got a great team. We've got a great logo, and we've got a great name. Now we just need an idea. Let's pivot. Let's pivot.
That might be the last time we see him alive.
Perfectly read. Absolutely nailed that line.
And the way he keeps saying pivot and waving his arms around, he's hitting his like dongle and it rattles, and it's just distracting enough that I'm like, okay, I kind of like this.
Definitely desperation in the eyes.
Oh yeah.
And he keeps this up, the energy of the entire episode, and he starts doing his alternate ideas for Pied Piper that he pitches at random people that we'll be seeing soon. There's a couple of those that I enjoyed more than I should have.
The first one I actually have an ideal client for when you talk about it.
Yeah, that's my favorite of the three by far. So while the rest of the team is retreating to contemplate their defeat, Jared is going to start his new project. He's fervently darting throughout the conference, accosting just random people he's never met before and polling their approval for various just kind of long shot ideas. He's got that, as he mentioned, pivoting to. He thinks Pied Piper might be able to pivot to one of these. His first idea is to turn the app into a rodent finder, which is it's the group he tells us to is just as horrified as you would think they would be about that.
Well, that's because he's not down in the sewer proposing this idea to the Rat King, because this is exactly what the Rat King needs.
I think the Rat King knows where all his rats are at any given moment.
This might get bringing rats from other sewer systems.
So you're saying you want him to expand?
Yeah, I'm saying if the Rat King is serious about world dominate, which he said. He wasn't saying, I just want to take over the city.
No, it was world with my one tanker
then
poison.
The Rat King needs to be talking to French rats, to Bulgarian rats.
He really needs to spread the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true. He only has command of his own sewer, so he could expand.
Pied Piper can be the company to do that for him.
Yeah. Actually, the pitch that Jared makes here is like, we're not telling you what to do with the rats. He just says, like, we're just here to get you rat stat, which is just a fantastic line. And he always wraps all of these up with an impassioned, would you be very interested, somewhat interested, or not interested? And then which one, several times. Actually, at the end, he deviates from that and just says, would you be interested, very interested, or very interested? So meanwhile, Dinesh and Guilfoyle are walking around dejectedly, lamenting how hopeful everyone around them still is. I think it's Dinesh that says they're so hopeful. What a bunch of dicks or something like that. And they spot a recruiter for a company called Corpy, which just got a $280 million evaluation, similar to what I gave you for Money Trough.
Right.
Dinesh and Guilfoyle ponder jumping ship and just switching over to that company since they're doing so well, but they ultimately decide that's not something they would do because they're not dickheads. And Guilfoyle even says, like, dick and head, totally two separate things. Meanwhile, separate scene, Jared is doing another pitch. He's got, this one is an app that could determine whether you were going to heaven or hell.
This might have been my favorite one, because I think he even says, like, statistically or something.
Yeah, like exact statistical probability. Let's get this one to that online 2013 movie cast.
Yeah, they'd be like, oh, go take all our money.
You know what, though? As absurd as that concept is, I think you could do it because the rules are written down. The Bible says don't do this, so if
that stuff doesn't matter anyway. We know that from online 2013. You just have to say, oops.
So I guess the app would determine whether you've been baptized or not, and that's it.
Yeah, what we need is a Santa app that tells you if you've been naughty or nice. So maybe also it tracks your phone activity.
I do like using a variety of metrics. I know that, ultimately Christians don't look at it that way, but I do like trying to, if you do follow the Bible's teachings and you have to log everything you've done and it spits it all out like, 78%, that'd be cool.
Put in the mean stuff you said today, and you have to type that in. What's the nice stuff you said?
But then the person creating the app or company has to weigh certain things more. Adultery is not as bad as murder.
Right.
So,
there's a committee for this, I would imagine.
Well, you would have to, because you would have to workshop it, because no two people are going to agree on it. So you have to do a mean.
And you have to bring St. Peter in on this. He's the guy that has to let him in or not.
I like this idea, too. I want to form the committee that decides this, and Kirk Cameron's definitely going on it.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be annoying on the board meeting with him, but we have to deal with it.
It's at his house on a stump.
At least we know there'll be food. I should specify that's an inside joke because we've watched a lot of a Kirk Cameron talk show where he just has food he kind of rubs.
We're going to do a bonus show someday.
Elsewhere, Gavin is walking around with a gaggle of tech journalists and their smartphones, holding it out for the sound bites at him, and Ehrlich takes this time to burst through to interrupt, suggesting through just innuendo that Gavin was somehow responsible for his assault in the last episode, and also claims that despite all of this horrible rumors about him, that Ehrlich stands by him and supports him. Just a really kind of a sneaky way of suggesting all kinds of horrible things about Gavin.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where he's going, I don't buy into all those rumors about him doing this stuff because I'm a good guy, and being overly sarcastic for it. It was great.
Yep.
This is an example of a thing with Ehrlich where I wasn't necessarily as drawn to this as some of his other line reads. And this one, it's just like some of it's kind of just outlandish.
What I like about this, even more than the line read, is the character element of it, which is Ehrlich is, and I think the show's really good at this, at presenting him as a kind of a skillless person in so many ways, but those people are really useful in business because it's all about bamboozling people, screwing them over, tricking them, just being loud. And this exact scene is how people get things done. Like, just say a thing in the air, the rumor will run, if the person has that sort of social cachet.
I've never gotten a chance to mention this on the podcast somehow, but my favorite thing about The Sims 3 is in the business career track, when your sim is in the business track, normally you have to reach certain requirements of your sim skills to level up in the career.
Right.
Business has no skills required in The Sims 3. It's all about the relationships you make. And if you network well enough, you get promoted. When I saw that, funny. I was only like 25 when I played that. I was like, that is so cool. I really like that they did that, because it is 100% true that it's just like the networking people, the extroverts, the natural born sleazebags that can work in the business field, and just like they meet the right person, they get offered a job that they don't have to do anything in, and they just rise, and they're just good at it.
We have a podcast, we're all good enough at talking. It's too bad we're not evil. We would have so much money.
And I just I would never have the energy to do what we do just talking to people. That sounds horrible.
Well, that's because you don't have enough evil.
I'm talking at
you could get that evil to fuel you.
So you think extroverts might just be
like a Dracula.
Just evil?
Yeah, like they can do stuff we can't.
Actually, extroverts are vampires for people like us. They suck up our energy.
Yeah, well, there are energy vampires.
Yes.
It's a thing.
We have to go back home and recharge, and I need to go out and fucking just talk at people. So
yeah, you got a good point. I'm willing to consider extroverts might just be evil, period, no matter what field they choose to work in.
I don't care how much money you donate to charity, you go out and talk to people type.
I will disagree with you, Brian.
Is this about the vampire?
No, I kind of agree that you do have to be evil, but I'm evil. You just have to be a particular kind of evil.
Right. Well, now you're like, if this were a D&D game, you're like evil neutral or whatever.
Well, sure. Chaotic evil, I think.
Yeah, you're not the kind of evil where you're actually trying to
I'm not malicious.
Yeah, you're not trying to do any damage or
You might
anything.
actually be like good evil then or something.
Yeah,
some kind of
like that.
We have to have the chart in front of us.
Maybe chaotic good?
Yeah, because then there's
benign evil.
All right. Well, chaotic neutral. I'll go with that.
Okay.
Because then you got Bilbo
side
over here, and there's Gollum, and then there's me in the chaotic neutral.
Yeah, there's definitely, just for the record, in case anyone's listening to this that knows a lot about that, there is no good evil. That's completely wrong. Don't say like, oh, this guy he's so stupid, I hate him.
They were going to.
I know there's no good evil. It wouldn't make a lot of sense, to be honest, I admit. So Gavin just perplexed here, just tries to get away from Ehrlich as fast as he can. That's the only thing he can think to do with this.
Yeah, he realizes fighting this is not worth it. I'm just walking away.
Next, we see that Dinesh and Guilfoyle have immediately changed their mind on not approaching this recruiter and are now up in his grill talking to him about, hey, by the way, just so you know, guy from Quirpy, we love Pied Piper. It's fantastic. And Guilfoyle gets a great line here that you have to know his background to understand when he says in a deadpan voice, feel like every day I've died and gone to hell. And of course the guy's like, what? And he has to explain, Satanist. As they close into transition to asking this guy for jobs, the recruiter just cuts them off and is like, okay, Pied Piper sounds fantastic. You guys sold me. I just need to be honest with you guys. We're actually about to go under in a few weeks, and can you guys hire me at Pied Piper?
I thought this was a nice moment of like, all these are joke companies.
Yeah, none of it's real.
It's
all a
fake
bunch
money.
Of liars,
yeah,
like acting like they have anything when they don't.
Yeah, just schmoozers that don't do anything.
And there's just a lot of, like, that guy says jargon. He says, yeah, like, we've gone under with the venture butthole. And
we haven't even mentioned yet how incredible the naming conventions in this show are.
Yeah.
Quirpy, Hooly, like all the logos are all lowercase, which at the time they all looked like that.
And they even joke about that in the show.
In the first season, I think.
They also have an episode later in season 2 where they're trying to, Pied Piper needs like some sort of partnership to stay afloat. And they partner with a porn site. And the porn site is at this serious business convention and everyone's there listening seriously. But they have their little nameplates of their companies and they zoom in on like, it'll be like something about fisting on there and like gaping asshole or something with these people that are sitting there just seriously listening to business talk. And they have that little juxtaposition. It's perfect.
What's the name of this event? It's like TechCrunch Disruption?
TechCrunch Disrupt.
That's so perfect because it's those little nerdy people who code all day thinking like, oh, I'm such a badass.
I'm overturning the world.
Disrupt. Yeah, I'm going to hear Shakira. She says hips don't lie.
We should have had everyone watch the show in 2014 and Elon Musk wouldn't be so popular. Then again, like we talked about earlier, people might just get the wrong idea.
And Elon Musk was cool for like 2 years before people learned about the guy. There was a bit where it's like, oh, this is the smart guy who's funding rockets and stuff.
Then you find out, oh, he's not actually smart and he didn't create anything and he just came from apartheid money.
Yep.
And then he's like, wait, people want to hear what I have to say?
I will buy social media.
Lol, own the libs. Are you an adult?
No. Have you seen the Cybertruck? That man designed that thing.
Jared's still at work brainstorming new ideas for the company. This latest idea he has is actually he's left the conference entirely. And he's now just on the streets. Yeah. Crowdsourcing opinions on the street. His next idea here, he actually leaps at a couple that's walking with their baby in a stroller.
Leaps is the word for it, too.
And just spouts out just suggestion that what if we had an app where you could track, he actually says where I could track your baby. And then he positions it from his perspective. He clearly means for parents, but he's saying like, I could track your baby and there's nothing you could do to stop
No
me.
one would ever know where the baby was.
And then he tries to position like the benefits of this, like, most missing children are never found, is what he tells the parents. And that way they'll see how
thinking
useful
they'll
this
be
idea.
comforted because
Exactly.
they can track the child.
This is when he muffs the ending and says after this idea about putting an app on their baby that he can find is when he suggests they have to either be interested, very interested, or very interested. Back at the hotel, Richard runs into Monica. That's Peter Gregory's right-hand man who has just exited the elevator and is wheeling her luggage out the front door. She knows what's coming. She sees the writing on the wall, as they say, and is going to leave. She says Peter Gregory just called her, wants her back in Palo Alto. It's been real, but she's got to go. So the two say their professional goodbyes. Their goodbyes as professionals, because at this point, Monica's been in all 8 episodes and she's been working alongside them. But as they believe right now, it looks like that's it. And they're not going to be working together anymore. So Richard and Monica kind of have a little goodbye. There's a little bit of an attempt at a silver lining. I won't ask what they end up doing with this, but there's a suggestion that perhaps Monica might be interested in getting to know Richard outside of work as, I guess, a silver lining for Richard.
Has there been any of this love stuff? Because, I mean, it's very clear Richard has a hots for her, but have they interacted in that way at all?
No, it just kind of comes in there. And as far as season 2 goes, they have still not done anything with that. I personally hope they don't, because I don't see Richard as a guy who needs a romantic on-screen partner. That doesn't seem like it would fit.
And this is our one woman of the show. We don't need to be like, oh, she's clearly here just to be the wife.
I remember thinking when I watched this initially that this was strange. Almost maybe they wanted to just plant the seed in case they wanted to use it. Because, I mean, they do seem like friends, throughout the season, but there's no like spark there.
I don't feel like Monica would be in, like, what connection would she have with Richard? I just don't get it.
I mean, especially with Ehrlich right there.
That's what he would say.
Yeah, that is what he would say.
So that little thing happens, and I didn't like it. I'm glad that so far in my watching, they haven't followed through on that. Outside, Jared's latest effort has gotten the attention of the police, as you guys could have guessed. They're now questioning him at length, asking him if he has any drugs on his person, and Jared cheerfully pulls out a pill bottle of Adderall. This is actually a callback moment, man, that I was mentioning. He says, I have this Adderall for an underage child that I brought to my home. So a couple episodes ago, they needed work on the app for cloud programming, and none of them knew how to do it. So they outsourced that one role to like a 17-year-old prodigy who knew specifically how to do cloud stuff. And they paid him like $20,000 for 1 weekend of work. They brought him to the house. He accidentally fucks up their whole system, and they had to like rebuild it from scratch. That's the whole drama moment. But he needs Adderall to do his coding, so they send Jared to pick it up for him. It's a prescription for him, but he runs out of it. They have to get it for him. And Jared, that's when he gets stranded on the island. He doesn't come back to give the kid the Adderall, so he's still got it on him.
I really enjoy how this is written to where Jared says everything the exact worst way you could possibly say it.
Even though to him it's just the truth.
Just
so
the truth.
What's the problem?
And the lines are delivered so cheerfully.
Which is, to the police, like extremely unnerving that he's acting that way. So yeah, the police have heard enough at this point. They attempt to take Jared away. He flees, screams that he's too busy pivoting to come along.
I'm going to tell that to the cops if they ever try to take me.
Just tell them we've got too many things to do.
How do you think your dad would handle it if some ruffian he's trying to arrest said he was pivoting?
I don't think he would have been able to chase him. Too bad knees.
And the smoking.
Yeah, that too.
In the hotel suite, the rest of the Pied Piper team is splayed out, still licking their wounds. Richard, Dinesh, and Guilfoyle are all in favor of just not even doing the presentation tomorrow because it's not like they can change what's already going to happen here. But Ehrlich is still adamant that the show must go on. That's how business world works. And not only that, they can win. As he speaks, Jared returns from his visit with the police. He's not going to, there's no legal trouble going on for him apparently, but he still looks very frazzled and out of sorts. He's not.
And he does not actually ever say to anyone where he was.
No. It's here in this moment that Ehrlich utters the episode-defining line.
We're going to win even if I have to go into the auditorium and personally jerk off every guy in the audience.
That's it. It seems like an innocuous throwaway. I didn't even really catch it that much the first time I watched it, but this...
Just jerking off.
This leads...
Bunch of guys.
This leads Dinesh and Guilfoyle in particular, who are clearly just weird people with very brilliant minds, especially since now they feel like the business is done.
They need to solve a problem.
There's nothing left to do, so they are just the kind of inane personalities to take something stupid like that and actually approach it analytically from like a programmer's point of view.
And that is what makes this scene work so well. And Ehrlich, too, something that he would get mad if someone else said about him, he takes it so seriously. And everything he says about it very matter-of-factly. He's even doing jerk-off motions with his hands as he says it. But like just saying, like, this is how I would do it.
And this is obviously a very famous moment from this show.
Probably the very most famous moment in the show.
Well, they do a lot of really interesting things, and it's believable too. Like when they're talking about it, how they say that there's a 10-minute presentation window, there's 800 guys, and they have all these diagrams, and they come up with things like dick to floor,
mean jerk time.
Yeah, like all these algorithm expressions, and it sounds like, okay, this actually is a thing that they're really thinking through.
The other funny layer about this is it's so absurd, yet is it really more absurd than tech jargon? You know, when you think about it.
But this is a thing that people could glom onto because, you know, when you and your friends are just dicking around, this is what you could do.
Right.
Like maybe not to their degree of science because that's the kind of nerd they are. But, you know, us three sitting around making fun of whatever movie, we could have a joke like this to put our own spin on it. So I think it just makes it really easy to identify with these people.
It works because it is rooted in the characters, which is always going to make it feel more natural.
And like Brian said, them getting so into it is really kind of like because these are people who have to have that and they feel like they're not going to right now. So they're latching on to whatever.
They've spent years working on the same thing that's been stolen from them. And I like that this essentially is no different than the scenes in the show where they are trying to solve a tech problem.
They approach it the same way. It's all very serious despite how absurd it is, which is, again, why it works. I did appreciate the scene. I wouldn't say that I found the humor that effective. Like I wasn't laughing at jerking off 4 dicks at once, but the way they presented it being such a ridiculous subject on that level, I at least respected what they did.
This is, for me, a total case of like the performance really carrying it too for everybody, because these lines on paper, if you get hammy actors in there, it doesn't work. It just comes across as overly juvenile. You get people who seem like friends who know how to read lines, and it works.
The part that really ends up being the breakthrough for Richard is when they have talked about the optimal way is putting like 2 guys side by side across from 2 other guys side by side. They're standing dick to dick, and Ehrlich can stand between them all and use both arms to get 4 at once on each side.
Yeah, you have to go tip to tip, but you have to measure not dick length, but floor to dick.
Right, exactly.
Length. And you get them all lined up the right way. And that's, again, I mean, we're analyzing the comedy scene here, but the best part about it is it's these analytical guys figuring out the details that you don't want to think about. But when you do think about them, you go, no, that's right.
And it
that
actually
is how you would have to do this.
Yes, and it does oddly do what it needs to do in context of the show's of the plot point at the end. Like it illustrates
really
well enough what they're trying to say.
Richard has, in his own mind, gone away while they're doing all this. They're breaking this down in absurd detail, where Richard just hears middle out with the dick situation, and it's a light bulb in his head, in his weird little programmer brain. And he thinks like, of course, middle out. That is what I need to do here. So he just bursts out of there, runs into the little adjoining room in the hotel, locks himself in there, and starts to get to work. Right as Guilfoyle is beginning to actually draw the extremely detailed diagram on the whiteboard about the optimal jerking alignment.
And they're still coming up with different variables here.
They have a few others that are really funny.
Someone asks Ehrlich, like, would girth matter? And he pauses and looks into the distance and then very matter-of-factly goes, I think it would.
Yeah, he looks like he's like disappointed, like, shit, I think it would.
Like, I hadn't thought of that.
You've thrown a whole wrench into this.
Later, Jared suggests, I think it's Jared that says, like, what about time to nut or whatever? Like, we don't want Ehrlich wasting his time on guys who have already nutted.
So you have to have rotating guys coming in and out, and yeah.
Guilfoyle says something about you've got a hot swap and a fresh dick.
So this is Richard's key moment. Middle out is the key to how they could improve the algorithm. The next day, everyone is ready to go to this big presentation.
Oh, I have one quick note on Richard working in his room.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of this stuff, you'd be like, this might not be as old as 2014. And then you hear him listening to generic dubstep. You're like, oh, it is 2014.
Well, what's funny is I watched this with the girlfriend, Katie, who is a programmer.
That's true.
And she mentioned upon seeing the dubstep that he's listening to by saying, that's what I have to do when I program. I have to listen to stuff like that.
Really?
And I'm like, there's no way I could do anything.
No.
I have to focus on what I'm doing at least a little. And that is so chaotic and just noisy. There's no way. But she says that's how she programs.
I guess I do listen to a lot of weird metal while doing things that are mind intensive. If you're like, but to me, the big takeaway with this sort of dubstep is it sounds like it was made by AI and sucks balls.
Well, yeah, certainly.
It's just bad enough to where maybe you could listen to that and concentrate because there's nothing in it.
And it made
there's
me think.
No content.
I don't know if this was a joke or not. Probably not. They were probably just like, this is what this guy might listen to.
Sure. Sounds like that's what
But by that, I kind of want them to be making a joke about Richard's music taste.
I think they might be, because I think Mike Judge would understand
Yeah, he probably
dubstep's role in the world.
Especially at the time. And it's not something like I listen to, but I do understand that it at least has evolved a little bit to where it's not the same 5 sounds.
Right. The middle out is also exactly what the executives at ABC said in like 2017. The middle out.
Took me just a second.
Oh, yeah. I
forgot that existed.
That's not a show that you put in your head.
I also might not have the years right, but that was my guess.
Who's in that?
Is that the janitor from Scrubs? Is he in that?
It is. You're 100% right.
Oh, wow.
How do I know so much about the middle?
You're a secret middle head.
All right, well, now we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to do the middle.
Yeah, we're going to have to be middling for a couple weeks. Neil something?
Patricia Heaton and Neil Flynn.
There we go.
Patricia Heaton. That's Everybody Loves Raymond, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
She was also in that news show with Kelsey Grammer.
Frasier.
Oh, yeah. It lasted like 2 years. And he was Frasier.
Good morning, Frasier.
That's all that guy can do.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any other range.
Versatile.
Wake up. It's me. Listen to me. I'm authoritative.
Hi, I'm Sideshow Frasier.
It's me, the Rumble.
Good at that, though. I like him in that role. It's just that's all he can do. The next day, everyone is ready to go for the big presentation. Richard wonders what happened to the door that Ehrlich took off the hinges when they were worried about him last night, when they were checking on him. Jared's finally run out of steam and is passed out on the floor completely. They don't bother waking him up to go to the meeting.
He looked very cute there. He was all like balled up. And
I believed it,
a little sleepy guy.
that he needed that sleep too.
Yeah.
I could feel it as a viewer. I was like, yeah, don't wake him up. Let him sleep.
I've had a real tough time lately with the sleep. There have been at least 2 days in the last 2 weeks that I've gotten maybe an hour a night. And so I felt for him. I was like, I'd take those amphetamines too.
You have to quit getting stuck in shipping containers on islands.
Happens to me all the time.
So Richard explains to the team he may have made a breakthrough, but he's not really articulate and he's not really able to describe exactly what that breakthrough entails.
Did this annoy you guys at all? Because this to me is the whole...
a typical TV thing.
Yeah. I can't take 3 seconds to say 5 words to explain it.
And this wouldn't annoy me, maybe, if he weren't talking to a group of people who would 100% understand what he did.
Guilfoyle and Dinesh could get that in a second.
Because, I understood it. So, and I am stupid.
And it's for the reveal. I get it.
Yeah.
It's the theatrics, but
which
it
is
still
what,
annoyed me.
But to your point, Van, I just would write the scene a little differently to accommodate that. I get what they're trying to do, though, is build the suspense. And I do think Mike Judge is good at this sort of like heroes moment that you often see in sports movies. He does it in King of the Hill, too. I mentioned it a little bit when you introduced the show, Spencer, and we were talking about Mike Judge and King of the Hill, that those moments confused me when I was younger. How I'd be like, is he playing this straight?
Right. Yeah.
And he kind of is. That's the magic of it.
You have to find that middle ground.
Yeah.
He does.
He's very good at it.
And then he has Hank get raped by the dolphin.
Which is not a middle ground.
Or The Middle by Jimmy Eat World.
Or The Middle, that show with Neil Flynn and Patricia Heaton.
I've heard of that one.
It's also worth mentioning here that Monica has arrived back in her Palo Alto office as the team races down the corridor, Richard not answering. They're getting ready to present. Monica has gotten back to her office. She's sending a good luck text to Richard. Sorry, I couldn't be there. Then she just changes her mind, which you do in TV shows or movies. She changes her mind, gets back on a plane, and goes back to the conference.
And I don't like that it's so tied to Richard. It actually makes sense because she's been involved with this whole process for her to be interested.
She shouldn't have abandoned them, even with Peter Gregory making her. But yeah, it's the whole, like, I'm texting Richard, no, I want to be there for him thing. That's stupid.
And I don't like that it's made romantic when it should be. This character's even been set up as a professional. Like, she should feel like pride in having worked with the company.
And she's also personally invested in them, like a small amount.
So I'm curious because the way you guys are saying this, it seems like I might like her character in the other episodes.
She's great, yeah.
But having seen this, I just thought she was the dumb love interest.
No, and she doesn't get enough characterization either, but she's presented as someone that is, very savvy. And this makes her seem more like it's all just on a love interest level.
Yeah, I just felt like she was solely there to be Thomas's prize eventually.
That's what if I saw only this episode, that's exactly what I would have thought.
Ordinarily, she'll kind of give Richard private advice on, like, the billionaires will tell him one thing and she'll be like, just do this. She'll help him out with kind of the inside stuff that she has access to.
And they wisely build conflict out of that, of her being a middleman, essentially, between the rich people and the tech people.
Because sometimes she's more on their side, on the rich side, than she should be. Like she'll say something thinking that it'll help Richard when it really is helping them. It's helping the rich side. So occasionally he calls her out on that, and there is some good conflict with that stuff. So it's time for Pied Piper to present. As a last-minute executive decision, Richard has decided, even though Ehrlich is way more suitable for the speaking part, and Richard usually can't do it because of anxiety, he says, I'm just going to have to do this myself here because I don't have time to explain it to you. Ehrlich is very upset about this, and it goes so far as to even tell Richard that he's terrible. And it doesn't even say at presenting, just says,
you're terrible.
You're terrible. Reluctantly, Ehrlich takes the mic and informs the audience of the change of plans. Richard overcomes his anxiety, looks at all 800 people out there.
And does this. This is the Pied Piper presentation, right?
And then everyone was on board.
That would have solved this whole problem if he would have just played that all along.
Let me tell you guys Pied Piper's business platform, okay? You guys ready?
Uh-huh.
You're going to stage a series of concerts across the nation, and you're going to rob them. You know how?
How's that?
You melt the door handle off.
Oh, I'm on board.
That sounds like a device that Silicon Valley would be interested in.
Here's the thing, though. We have to have, 5 or 6 ladies who wear all black and prance about.
Groovy, man.
Well, that'd be really hard to pull off in Silicon Valley. There's not a lot of ladies. I don't think there's 5.
No, and I didn't see any Carls around, big muscly guys with blonde little boy haircuts.
Oh, it's a shame.
I mean, there are some little boy haircuts in this show.
Sure, just not on big muscly 48-year-olds.
All the while, as Richard's getting ready to start awkwardly in his way, Guilfoyle and Dinesh are examining the changes on the laptop they've got with him, and they can't really tell without him explaining what he's done. They just notice that he seems to have deleted everything. It's all gone from what they can find. So whatever vision Richard has seems to be only known to him as he begins his presentation. He tells the audience Pied Piper is not going the route they intended to due to the fact that Hooli already did it and did it better.
And it's a bad presentation.
He's not good at it. Ehrlich's right. He's terrible.
Yeah, ugh.
So he's just kind of awkwardly saying, like, there's no point to do what we were trying to do because Hooli already did it. He gets right down to the nuts and bolts and uses developer speak to break down the coding processes for compressing files. I don't know if this is real.
He has this little sheet of paper, which Ehrlich then has to run out to project because he's like, no one can see this.
He's trying to show 800 people a piece of paper.
This had the same effect on me both times I saw this episode, and you guys might think I'm insane, but I had an emotional jolt at that moment because Ehrlich is, and it's acted really well, he's acting like in this selfless way of like, hold on, let me help you.
He really did.
In a way that he never does. But in that moment, like when it really comes down to it, he's got to help him, and he's paying attention to those small details. Like, I need to go help Richard, my friend. Instead of like, I'm going to take the presentation over.
This is Ehrlich sacrificing, which he doesn't normally do. That's
not much of a sacrifice, but attention is very big for him.
Right. It's his big thing. And yeah, Richard is so in the weeds with his developer jargon that it's not occurring to him. You can't show a size of a room that big, a piece of paper. He just doesn't have that thought in his head. So Ehrlich kind of clues him in, like, they can't see that, and puts it on the whatever it is.
They have an overhead projector. Why? Why would they ever have that?
Richard specifically, they do a good job of making him kind of an out-of-touch genius. Like he doesn't really know how to live.
And the actor, Mr. Middleditch, he does fine at that. I just find that to be like pretty low effort from my personal viewpoint.
Versus some of the other billionaires or geniuses presented, which are eccentric beyond reason.
So Richard reveals his new method for compression, middle out, up and down, back and forth all at once. Tells the audience he scrapped everything and rebuilt Pied Piper's entire engine from scratch. And the result? He did this earlier, he tested it out. He got a Weissman score of 3.8, guys. That's a lot better than the 2.9, which we thought was the theoretical limit of compression.
I really liked how it kind of on the fly has to not say how he really came across. He's like, my friends were talking about how to manipulate data, and if you could, how many data you could manipulate at once.
The audience is very impressed. They gasp because they know the meanings of these Weissman scores. A judge at this point just interrupts to ask how that's even possible, because we all know. We know.
Does everyone have the same thing down in their notes for what this judge is?
You mean
Mustache David Wallace?
It is David Wallace.
That's what
with
I
a mustache. Yeah. When he popped in, I was like, holy shit, it's David Wallace.
With a mustache.
But there's a mustache.
And a real good one. And this guy, I wish I remembered his name, the guy that plays David Wallace.
Did you know he was actually just like a traitor?
That's how they found him. Yeah, they're like, we want someone to play a role like that. And he was kind of getting into acting.
And now he's been in stuff.
He's really good at it.
I don't know who David Wallace is.
From The Office, the guy who was the boss.
I don't remember. Was it a later season?
No, he's in the whole time. The guy, he works for Dunder Mifflin. He's like Jan's boss.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been so long since I've seen that the majority of the show.
I think he was in like 2 of our episodes when we covered it.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, he's just probably struck me as not important enough until...
Well, he didn't have a mustache.
Until he gets the mustache, yeah. So he says, look, Richard, if this is going to do what you say it is, like, don't talk anymore. Don't even bother.
Yeah, shut up.
Just let's give you a file and we'll just call this over if it can do what you say it can.
And this is the equivalent of like a sports movie where like it's the bottom of the ninth, but it's pretty funny to see They do pull it off, but the dramatic application of that to tech, like, oh, how fast can you compress this file? This is a really hard file. It's like I have to get a hit off one of the top closers in the game.
Well, and we get the immediate callback there because they're looking to find a file. What file would someone come up with that would be the biggest deal to Pied Piper?
They turn to this guy that looks like Colin Mockery, sort of.
Right? And he just pulls his bag out and he's like, oh, I've got the perfect file. It's Avatar.
Well, that's the thing is what does this guy have and what is he carrying it around at this conference for?
Based on what we see,
maybe for this.
He has a 3D video file of a cavern because they show it. What is he doing with that?
Did he film that himself or something?
He might have made it himself as
like
his own little
spelunking?
Personal 3D project or something.
Yeah,
maybe he just dabbles in that.
He started the whole 3D trend, and he wants to keep it going. He's Mr. 3D.
That could be. I thought that was the Dudley Boys, though.
Yeah, the Dudley Death Drop. Mm-hmm.
So this is a 132 gigabyte uncompressed 3D video file, which is, of course, Pied Piper's. That's the fly in the ointment. What are some of the other expressions for that?
Spoon in the stew. Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Salt in the wound.
Fish up in that air.
It's a thing that they just couldn't quite get down. It's the one thing that they weren't sure they could compress properly. So, of course, that's the file the judge has for whatever reason.
Wet dog in an IKEA.
It's their white whale. That one did make sense.
Yeah, I mean, if it works out, that would be their white whale.
But was the whale up in the sky?
Yeah.
Oh,
no, because they're not fish. You said fish up in the sky.
Oh, that's right. They're mammals.
Yeah.
The dramatic music kicks in at this point, which is a little much, considering the stakes, just like a tech thing here.
This is the thing I'm talking about, though.
They did it well.
He did this in King of the Hill a lot, like with the swelling strings, and it's like the first several times I would see it, I was so thrown off by it.
The Pied Piper quietly panics because they don't really believe this is going to work, especially with a 3D file. And it's the one format, like we said, they could never handle. If they don't do it here, the company really is done. This was their Hail Mary, and it's not going to work if they can't do it. So Richard transfers the file into the program, and we wait in suspense.
And we watch a status bar.
Oh, yeah. It gets hung up at 40% briefly, and everyone's already panicking at that because they're thinking, it's going to stick there. But it goes right through after that. The resulting file compressed all the way down to 24 gigabytes.
You know how they could make it really, really tense for me or for Van, too? If someone was working in some sort of digital audio workstation and things were going wrong and they didn't know why.
It was like, oh my God, this audition file, I haven't auto-saved in a bit, but I'm converting now. If the conversion crashes, will I lose all of that progress and have to re-edit Brian?
I have latency now for no reason?
So this seems like bad news because 24 gigabytes from 132, there's no way, guys. You can't compress a file that much. So according to Richard's calculations, that is like, it should be twice that big.
Richard's like, the odds of it actually being that small and having worked are like the odds of Tom Berenger beating out a bunt single to win the game.
He absolutely would say that. He would know the baseball reference.
He watched Major League.
The judge expresses skepticism as well as us and as the viewer, we know, asking Richard, run that file through a Weissman test and we'll just see what you did wrong. And we'll all learn from this, Richard. During this process, though, we learned that the file was perfectly compressed. Richard was wrong in his calculations, but actually in the underestimating category.
Yeah, it turns out Bernie Mac did revive his career and get that 3,000th hit.
That's why they call him Mr. 3,000.
He could have gotten it, but he chose to give the ball to the fans.
Is that what happened?
He stays at Mr. 29.99. I don't know who David Wallace is, but I remember that Bernie Mac moment. Bernie Mac, what a weird career, strange career. So the final Weissman score is actually 5.2, not 3.8. We're talking about 2.9 was our theoretical limit, and now we're at 5.2.
Tons of Weissmans.
What's going on here?
Bitch numbers.
That's like twice the previous record. So needless to say, everyone's amazed. Pied Piper is crowned champions. They get their $50,000 check for placing first.
I laughed really hard when that came out because I didn't know that would be the
You were thinking this was like an established
big
company
deal.
competition, yeah.
And I said to Katie, I was like, for these venture capitalist people, that is pennies. That won't do anything.
The idea more than the money is that you go on this big stage in front of everyone, you've taken a step forward.
Now you have a future, yeah. I mean, like
we're not going to reward you for it yet.
I would imagine like most companies in this, they're saying like haven't found their billionaire funder and maybe now they will. But they of course already had that. They did this a little out of order. So Ehrlich grants a celebratory interview right afterwards. The female journalist who is asking him questions, he responds to by saying, how fast do you think you could jerk off this entire room? Because I know exactly how long it would take me.
Such a smug look on his face, too. So it's pretty great.
Bert's kind of a dumpy line or whatever. It's done so well. It got a chuckle out of me.
So much self-confidence.
And she's disgusted, but still a little intrigued.
Yeah, like, what is he talking about?
Meanwhile, Richard is getting glad-handed by tech tycoons from all over who are clearly wanting in on his success. They're telling him, I don't know what you just did, but I want to buy it. Monica approaches last after all this and says, wow, Peter just called and told me he is not unpleased, which is his version of praise, and things are going to get really big at this point. We thought Pied Piper was dead. Now it's looking like it's better than ever. The future is brighter than it ever has been. And she does warn, as the season ends here, with all the success, there's going to be some downsides. Things are going to get a lot more crazy. Peter is going to want to be a lot more hands-on with the operation. There's going to be multiple offers of funding. You're going to have to hire a lot more people. And Gavin Belson's not going away. Basically, this is just going to get a lot worse.
Monica's like, next season on Silicon Valley.
Might as well be. She's basically like, hey, you thought it was hard before. It's going to be even harder now. Buckle up. So Richard rushes out to throw up as the credits roll.
And then I put that Green Day shows up, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I put this is when Green Day was already bad.
It had to be 2014, right?
Yeah.
Which song was that?
The song was from 2000, I think.
Yeah,
he was from Dookie, right?
That song was from like when I was done already. Because I listened through the first 5 technically, but the early ones are kind of rough.
I just remember when they did American Idiot, I went, all right, I'm done. That
was
much.
even after that.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, this is passing for this sort of thing these days.
Billy Joel Armstrong?
I think it's
just Billy Joe, but you've presented an interesting musician though.
Yeah,
like
mush those two together.
You ever hear the Billy Joel version of Longview?
I would like to. Not because I think it would be good necessarily, but just why doesn't it exist? I want to know what it is.
Does.
Punk Billy Joel. I mean, we all thought that, right?
So that wraps up our episode and the first season of Silicon Valley with that kind of the idea that the tensions are going to mount in the coming seasons. How did we feel watching that one?
It was fun. This was a good experience. I like getting a comedy that is a comedy and is enjoyable. I have problems with it, as I've voiced, but overall, this is a show that I could totally watch all of, and I'm sure I'd enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I already knew I liked it. It was fun to revisit. I was surprised at how much plotting. I'd forgotten how much plotting in the show there actually is, and I think that's ambitious, but sometimes it gets in the way a little bit. That said, didn't affect my enjoyment at all. I mean, it's kind of basically what I remembered.
I do think that after seeing the second episode, I thought, all right, I like this a little more because early on were the buzzwords. Like this episode was so Elon Musk tech focus centric that I was, But then the second one, it's more, I don't know, a little more grounded, I guess I would say.
Once the show gets out of its initial phase of like we're setting up the world that we're in, I do think it helps, get everything on the characters more.
And I do know and understand we're making fun of that, group, and I like that.
But to your point, it's maybe not the most fun thing to watch anyway.
Yeah, that's very much for example, I think I've said this before, when I watched Parks and Rec the first time, Aziz Ansari's character is so obnoxious. It got to a point where I almost couldn't handle it. The second time I watched Parks and Rec through, I was always in on the joke, but I'd had that experience. It didn't bother me as much. This is exactly the same thing. If I watch this episode again, that stuff wouldn't bother me as much.
Exactly, yeah. Once you kind of understand the fabric of the show. Now, you may never be able to tolerate Andy Samberg in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Never. I'll never pass that.
We are coming back next week with another episode of Silicon Valley. We will do the season 2 finale, so we're not quite done with our journey into what we know as the cradle of innovation, and surprisingly near San Francisco. I never really knew exactly where Silicon Valley was.
That's why San Francisco's fucked like it is.
Yep.
So we will be doing more of it next week. There's a few things you should know about the Boob Tube Boys before we go, though.
We're beautiful men.
If you don't
strong.
Already.
All three of us so strong.
smart and smart and smart.
Yeah, so we're on some places on the internet. If you like to use the internet, we have our own website, bootuinc.com.
Socialfriendpages.com.
Yep. We actually do have an Instagram. Boob Tube Boys on Instagram. If you like looking at pictures, we do our part. We put pictures on the internet. We also have a Discord you can find the link to on our website. Join us, talk to us if you want to. We have some bonus episodes on Patreon. That's patreon.com/BootuInc. You can go there. You can listen to a whole bunch of extra episodes that are outside of our normal feed where we're not necessarily talking about a TV show. We'll just talk about whatever there. It's a lot more loose. Those are free. You have the option to donate if you like what you do and you want to kind of treat us as a startup and fund us. There's a way you can do that. We're also on YouTube. Give us a like. Smash that like button.
Like and subscribe.
Leave a comment. And also, speaking of podcast apps, whatever your podcast app of choice is, go there, rate us, give us 5 stars, tell us what you like about it. I am making a decision personally, just me. You guys can bring it back. I'm going to kill the tattoo joke on this episode. It's going to be a huge moment. We're going to look back on it. If you give us 5 stars and rate us, we'll do something. I don't know what. It's not going to be a tattoo.
Well, we always do read your review on the podcast.
That's true. We will absolutely read your review, even if it's a mean one.
A review and a cartwheel.
Oh, speaking of podcast apps, I have decided I want to start listening to some again. I just got a new tablet, so I am now officially a Pocket Casts guy, just so you guys know.
Welcome to the team.
Oh, is that what you use?
Oh, yes.
It's great. It's free, and it works. It does everything I need to do.
What do you use again, Van?
GeoSavin, where we are, of course, number 5 in America.
I'm sure.
We are on GeoSavin, though.
Yeah.
You should. Actually, you can't listen to us on there now. I totally forgot about this. No, you can't, because there's this weird thing where, well, if you're in the U.S., you can't listen to us. If you're anywhere else, you can. The U.S. cannot use GeoSavin because GeoSavin does not monitor copyright like the U.S. does. Now, for the most part, podcasts don't monitor copyright anyway because, like, for example, we use the theme songs at the beginning.
We're reviewing things.
Yeah, but they usually strike. But anyway, but YouTube does. Anyway, GeoSavin. You can't listen to us.
You could just put whole Billy Joel albums on
yes.
on Geo7 podcast episodes.
What a podcast that would be too. Yeah, so whatever your app is, and if you're outside the US, it could be Geo7. Just give us a great review and tell us why you like what we do. We're going to keep doing it anyway, though, because we actually really enjoy this.
Yeah, we don't give a shit. Oh, this Silicon Valley episode gave me an idea, which is if anyone would like to punch me in the face and it results in me getting $50,000, come at me.
Have at it.
It'd be worth it. I definitely would also want to put myself in that category. You can punch me too. You can do like the jerk off thing and figure out a way to punch us all in the face at the same time if you want it like 100,000 even or something.
Spinning around. You actually don't punch. You just hold your fist out and spin like a tornado.
Not that hard. Just
pop,
get
pop, pop.
3 arms.
I would happily do that. So keep all of that in mind. And most importantly, listen to our back catalog and come back for more next week. We're going to do this again. More Silicon Valley, more tech ideas. We started this episode with a really good tech idea of our own. So I think that it's time to end this episode and get to work on Money Trough. Is that what it's called?
It's just Trough. With
we
two Fs.
changed it. All right, let's get to work, guys.
Trough.
Trough.